and mother. I can remember early on my mom's mom, my grandma Dorothy, Grandma Short in West Unity, Ohio. From the outskirts of town, she would pull us in a little red wagon uptown to the ice cream parlor or to the cafe to get what I thought was a great fish sandwich. I'm not sure if West Unity had such a thing, but to me it was awesome. I remember traveling to Morrison, Illinois on the west side and arriving and sitting down with Grandma Nice at the kitchen table to fold tiny paper boxes together. She'd spend that time with us and we'd have this challenge to see who could fold the tiniest paper box. And she'd just spend that time playing with us, encouraging us. I can still remember my mom tucking us in as kids with stories from A Little House in the Prairie, the Laurel Ingalls Wilder series. Some of you remember that? I remember how she poured into us. And I remember all those times that she drove us to the hospital. Broken bones and all. It started on my first birthday. I rolled down a hill and broke my right leg on my first birthday. Mom had quite a start. She was there when my two-year-old brother, Sam, took a shovel to the family beehive on the farm. And I don't know if you've ever seen a whole beehive of angry bees, let alone a 2-year-old covered in the stings of a whole beehive. She was there. She was there for my youngest brother and all of his asthma attacks. Bless you mothers that have 3 boys, or boys in general. There's a special place for you in all of that. I married into a wonderful mother-in-law, Mary Wilson. Hi, I hope we see you online today. Hope we get to talk. Just the way she blesses our grandkids, experiences. You know, each of these mothers is different, but they each have a special purpose and calling. My wife Alexis taught me a lot about parenting. When our 2 older ones were younger, Jeremiah and Eliana, we'd go to do chores, clean the house, and I would use my authority as a dad and delegation and, okay, you do the dining room, you do the kitchen, and, you know, there'd be lots of moaning, oh, Dad. And then Alexis would come along and say, okay, who can pick up the most toys? Who can clean the best? Let's make it a game. Let's make it a challenge. And pretty soon they're all scurrying around, and I'm like, what just happened? How did you do that? There was a time early in Eliana's life, we were playing in the driveway. She takes a fall, a tumble. And you know, I'm Dad. Get up, let's go. The game's not over. Let's keep playing, rub some dirt on it, right? That's Dad. And so she looks at Mom, and those big glassy eyes. Something's wrong, and Alexis knew it. I argued, but Mom said we need to go to the emergency room. You want to know who was right? It was Mom. It was a full-out broken collarbone, and it was probably good we went to the emergency room. You know, all these memories, all these events, no 2 moms are alike. You each have special giftings, a special calling, a special podium to speak into your family. But all moms, you have an office ordained by God. He created this from the beginning. He uses you to teach. He uses you to care. He uses you to love. And that's something that you do specially and only you can do. The moments you take, the example you set, the general care you give, they make lasting impressions on your children. Men, teens today, kids, don't check out. This message is for you too. We want to honor moms as we honor God, as we honor his word and how he intended things. Let's jump in today. We're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 1. You can open there. It should be on the screen with us as well. But 1 Samuel 1, starting in verse 1. There was a certain man of Rephaim Zophim of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu. And I'll stop. The ushers have notes if you want them. We're going back to passing them out. COVID's over. Amen. But we're passing things out again. So if you want some notes to follow along, grab them from the ushers as they come around. Son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph, an Ephrathite. He had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. We're going to stop right there. Scripture has a way of teaching us, both in the good of humanity as well as the heir of humanity. But these people are in the Bible so that we can learn and grow either way. We're going to see later on that Elkanah was a God-fearing man. He worshiped God and he loved his family. But we can see right here in these first three verses that he violated one of God's ordinations, one of his designs for us in life. 2 wives, right from the beginning. That was not how God designed it, right? We know from the book of Genesis, from the very beginning, God designed marriage to be between one man, one woman. It's a sacred bond between the two people and God. And when he violated that, he brought strife into his life. Now, I'm not here to preach a sermon on polygamy. I don't think that's an issue in this church. Like, none of you guys have 2 wives. But as I read this, there was a check in my heart, right? Because God isn't just looking at what's on the outside. He's looking at what's on our hearts. And God said, is there any rival in your heart? Is there any comparison in your heart? Guys, check yourself. Kids, it's not about comparing your mom to another mom. Guys, it's not about comparing your wife to another wife. Let there be no rival in your heart. God gave you a mom for you. God gave you a wife for you. And right off the bat, guys, kids, hear that. Let's continue on quickly in verse 3. Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah, his wife, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously, to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Elkanah did love Hannah. But men, we're not source for our wives. God alone is the source of strength, of person, of who they are. He loved, and men, I'm saying we should honor our lives. We should, wives, cherish them. But we have to make place for God to be the first source of their strength. Ladies, Hannah, as I see it, struggled, and Elkanah, they both struggled with comparison. They struggled with comparison. Elkanah would have married Hannah first. We see her name first in Scripture. But in this time, right, kids were a huge deal. And as you're comparing your life, your dynasty to other families, he saw something lacking. So rather than cherishing what God had given him, he married again. And that brought strife into his marriage. For Hannah, she was loved by Elkanah, but there was this rivalry going on. And rather than pressing into God early on, she felt that rivalry. She saw the second wife having children, something she couldn't have. And that comparison brought hurt. Comparison steals your joy. It takes away from the acknowledgement of what God has given you, the blessing God has given you. Let's not let comparison steal our joy. It makes us focus on the wrong thing. Her hurt, Hannah's hurt, came from comparison and from rivalry. Women, mothers, you don't need to compare yourselves to others. You press into God for your identity because he made you each uniquely, specially, beautifully, wonderfully. Right? We want to press into God and see where he wants us to grow, but it's not comparing one person to another. And that's hard in this day, right? Social media, Facebook, all of it. We see people's perfect dinner plates and perfect family vacations, and it's fun to have those things and go on those things, but they're yours. And it's fine to put them out there, but let's not compare. Let's not compare. Let's go to Luke 12:22 to 26, and we're going to include verse 31 here. See what Scripture has to say about these comparisons. This is Jesus speaking. And he said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life. Where does anxiousness come from? Sometimes it comes from comparison. Do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food. The body is more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. And we're going to keep going then. Yet God feeds them. Sorry, I got to find my place. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? If then you are not able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Instead, seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. He created you, he loves you, and he desires to fill you with all you need as you enter his presence. Be encouraged. Moms, you are a created mother. You are special and unique. There need be no comparison. Reminded of Scott's message a couple weeks ago from Philippians 1:6. And I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. He's doing something special in you, moms. And we're going to read this verse again later because it has several intonations for today's message. Moms, he's working in you, through you, he loves you, and we love you. But you're only going to find confidence, security, and true identity in God alone. The second big point I want to make today from this passage, I want to pull out, is that you should be encouraged as a praying mom. I know there's days where it's hard, but keep going. We're going to read on in 1 Samuel 1, starting in verse 9. After they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. And she continued praying before the Lord. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was speaking in her heart. Only her lips moved, and her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, how long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you. But Hannah answered, no, my Lord, I'm a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I've been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Then Eli answered, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. And she said, let your servant find favor in your eyes. Then the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Now, there's some stuff I want to bring out for you moms here, but men, let me speak to you again here first. As I read this passage and studied, I laughed out loud when I read this. Evidently, I'm not the first man to misread my wife or a woman. Evidently, this has been going on for thousands of years. I mean, legitimately, Eli may have been somewhat justified in this misunderstanding. Hebrew prayers in the temple would have been said aloud. But I'm sure you've never misread your wife, never misread your woman, right? Like just me. But even though it was justified, he was surely wrong here. His man brain, okay, I'm going to say it like logical minded, at least that's mine. A plus B equals C. Her lips are moving, but nothing's coming out. There must be a problem here. But then she clarified. She was pouring out her soul. She was pouring those years of hurt. All those times Peninnah had made fun of her, had teased her. She's pouring it out before God. She's pouring out her requests before God. She's pouring out her soul. And it looked a little funny. And then Eli, whether it was out loud or within himself, he acknowledges he's wrong. That's not always easy, is it, guys? But may we have the grace that when we come to see that our wives, our mothers have the best intentions for us, may we have the humility to let them move in that care for us. Kids, I know sometimes those boundaries don't feel good, but mom's putting them there for a reason. Husbands, she's looking out for us. She wants our best for us. May we have the humility to listen to that, to hear that, and acknowledge that. Women, moms, what do we see here for you? We see Hannah pour herself out in prayer. And we see her leave her burdens in the presence of God and walk away with his joy. Right? She had been chided and teased for years. She had hurt for years. Can you imagine the burden that she's laying out in this moment? All that comparison, all that hurt. There's so many places to turn these days, whether it be friends or social media, food. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we do to fill that void in our humanity. But there's power alone in God and prayer. We're to take our burdens to him. And the thing is, at this point, when she cried out to God, she left with joy. She was no longer sad. Several commentaries would even point out that only God could fix or use what God had caused. Verse 5 says that the Lord had closed her womb. There was deep hurt in this, but it drove her back to God. He's always wanting that relationship. He used that hurt. And we see later in Samuel the miraculous answer to her prayers. But that answer came after his presence. It was about his presence first. I want to speak briefly about another woman of prayer, Susanna Wesley. Some of you have heard the story, maybe read a devotional about it, but I thought it was great. A woman of prayer. She was born in 1669. At the age of 19, married Samuel Wesley, who was a Church of England minister. Susanna would give birth to 19 children. 10 of them lived a full life. And Samuel was constantly writing or out doing things for ministry, sometimes getting caught up in politics and other things. His divisive place in politics are probably what led to their parsonage, their home being burned down twice. The parsonage had a farm, and he wasn't real interested in working that farm. So he ended up in debtor's prison. I mean, there were challenges, even though she's married to a pastor. And I don't know if God was speaking to me on that. Like, do some reflecting there. There's no challenges, are there? But there were challenges. But Susanna committed early in her life to being a mother of prayer. Now, in my head, I'm trying to picture, how does this mother of 10 in a little church parsonage find place and time to prayer? Time to pray, and some of you know this. She would go to her rocker in their home, and she would have an apron on, and she'd place that apron over her head. And this was her sign. I'm with Jesus and y'all need to back off. Now, the thing is, her praying, her kids saw that, right? That's an obvious sign. I am spending time with God. I am praying. And I can only imagine how that ministered to the kids and set an example for them. Likewise, we see the power of those prayers. 2 of her kids, we do know their names, John and Charles. They grow on to be great ministers of faith, writing hundreds of hymns, preaching to thousands of people, making an incredible difference for Christ. It started with her prayers, because their dad was out doing all sorts of other stuff, but mom was praying. Dads, we need to be present, but moms, be encouraged. Your prayers make a difference. Now, we're not out to compare. Again, get rid of comparison. I'm not comparing my kids to John and Charles Wesley, and I hope you're not. And moms, you're probably not praying with an apron over your head. Like, I'm not telling you to do that. Let's talk principle, not replication. Your kids see you when you're praying at the dinner table. Your kids hear you when you're worshiping along to music, praise music in the car as you're going from school to the ball field to home for dinner. They see those examples you set. It may not be the kitchen rocker with an apron, but let there be prayers. Let there be times that you're spending with your kids, because when they see it, it makes a difference. And for Susanna, we see those preachers. Your kids, again, you have that special place in your kid's life. Let's go back to the story of Hannah. We're going to skip forward a bit. Hannah goes home from the temple after pouring her heart out. and she and Elkanah are blessed with a son, Samuel. As time moved on, it was time to go back to the temple for the yearly sacrifices. In 1 Samuel 1:22, it says, "But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, 'As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever.' So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. And the child was young." Hannah was devoted to God and devoted to raising children for God. She missed out on some of the family experiences, some of the things she could have done during Samuel's early years. She made sacrifices to raise him right. She also missed out on some of the peace offerings. Now remember, the peace offerings were that time every year where Peninnah took it upon herself to chide, to make fun of, to tease. In her humanity, I can only imagine how good it would have felt to go back with those peace offerings to say, "Look, I have the favored son in the family now." In her humanity, that would have felt good to rub in. But that wasn't her focus. Her focus was on God. Her focus was on raising that child right. Her focus was on her devotion was to God and his purposes. Your purpose as a mother is to lead your children towards Christ and to put them in a position to know Christ for themselves. Your care prepares them for his service. Whether you work or stay at home, know that one of your greatest callings is to prepare his children that he's given you for their callings. So be encouraged as a devoted mother. It matters. It matters so much, and your kids see it. They see you. They see your sacrifice. They see your love. They'll remember it. Half of the annoying stuff they do just to get a little more of you. And they'll remember those moments. Just this week, I'm driving home from church, and usually when I leave the church, I dial my wife to let her know I'm on the way home. And as I'm on the phone, she says, "Josh, I got to let you go." And I'm like, "What's going on?" Because that's not normal. Excuse me, my daughter knows where this is going, so she's already laughing. As I'm on the phone, she says, "I got to go." I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "Annalea, she's our 3-year-old. She's got rocks up her nose." And I say, "Rocks up where?" "Up her nose. I'll talk to you later. Bye." So I'm driving home. I'm praying like, "Lord God, get those rocks out. I need rocks in her head." And what? So afterwards, we got the rocks out. Alexis did. And said, what happened?" "I was trying to get the boogies out." "I'm not sure how you're going to get the boogies out by sticking more rocks up there." But you know what? Our kids do all sorts of annoying things, crazy things. But I think half of it is to get your attention. And they'll remember those moments. In 1984, my family moved to Goshen. We'd pretty much lost most of what we had as farmers in the recession of the early 80s. And so when we moved to Goshen, it was doing what we could to make ends meet. Dad worked a factory job at this time, and Mom stayed home. And to help make ends meet, she sewed some of our clothes. Now in the 80s, those of you that are my age, older, remember how cool graffiti and neon was. I mean, it was cool. I don't know if it ever will be again, but it was. And so Mom took the trouble upon herself to sew us shorts that were black on one leg and neon graffiti on the other. And my brothers and I all had these really cool matching shorts. I don't know if we were cool or not, probably not, but mom took the trouble upon herself to make ends meet, but to care for us. And I remember it. As we got older, Mom got back into teaching. And so in middle school, our house was a place where kids would come and play ball. We'd play ball in the driveway for hours. We'd get tired, we'd get thirsty, we'd go inside for a drink, and we'd come through the garage, through this little entryway into the kitchen. And as we came through the entryway, there would Mom be grading papers at the computer and with dinner on the stove. And then we'd finish up our ball games. We'd come back in, dinner was ready. She'd check on us, check on our work, check on how our days went. And then when supper was over and cleaned up, she'd go back and work on her master's. She was working on her teacher's master's at this point. I don't know if I had any understanding of the sacrifice that she was putting out at that time, but I sure do now, and I remember it, and I'm so grateful. And again, I'm not here to compare my mom to anybody else's mom. I'm here to say I remember it, and moms, your kids are going to remember these things. Keep going. That devotion, that sacrifice, it's worth it. It's worth it. God sees it, and your kids see it. Your devotion is first to God, and then to your family. I honor you, mothers, for your sacrifice, and the rest of us, let this be our reminder to thank Mom today. Not just to wish her happy Mother's Day, but to take a moment to recognize all the special little things she does, probably on a daily basis, that mean so much to us. Finally today, moms, I want you to be encouraged as a sending mother. We prepare our kids. We're going to go back to 1 Samuel 1, verse 27. For this child I prayed, and the Lord granted me my petition that I made of him. Therefore, I have lent him to the Lord. This is Hannah speaking. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. And he, Samuel, worshiped the Lord there. Hannah could not lend. She could not give what she had not received from the Lord. She recognized this amazing gift. You may be well down this road, right? Some of you have kids that are on their way out of the house or out of the house. Some of you are holding newborns, and some of you are expecting newborns this year. But God gives you mothers a special bond with your children. But that bond is there to nurture and teach. And he understands how strong that bond is when you send them out. But you're preparing them for that purpose, to be sent out, to go and worship the Lord for themselves, to know the Lord for themselves. Who is this Samuel that Hannah was lending back to the Lord, giving up? He was the very thing she cried to the Lord for. She poured herself out for. What greater gift could Hannah given back to the Lord than that son, that cherished son that she wanted so badly? And those of you who know Scripture know Samuel's story. Think about this. Prayer by Hannah. Devotion by Hannah. And then sending out, giving back by Hannah leads to Samuel, the man of God, the judge of Israel, the prophet. Samuel, as a young boy, was in the temple and he heard God's voice. God did not speak to everybody through the Holy Spirit as he does now, as he did then. But he spoke directly to Samuel. And through Eli's coaching, he said, "Speak, Lord, your servant heareth." As he got older, he became a judge of Israel, trying to lead them back to God's presence, doing everything he could. As the Israelites rejected the judges and wanted the kings, it was him that warned the people, "Are you sure you know what you're asking for?" God gave him that foresight. But when the people wanted the king, God used Samuel to anoint Saul. And then when Saul got sideways, it was Samuel that had to confront the king of Israel, perhaps to his own danger. And it was Samuel that God used to then anoint David, a man after God's own heart. To see David for who he was, the youngest of his brothers, maybe the least, but God gave that Samuel that vision. But where did Samuel come from? He came from God, and he came from Hannah. It was Hannah who had prayed. It was Hannah who was devoted. It was Hannah who gave him back to God. Hannah was created by God, found her joy in his presence. She prayed to God, and God heard her prayers. She was devoted to God and to raising the children that God had given her. And Hannah released those children back to God. I want you to hear these principles: prayer, devotion, sending. The role God has given you as mothers is special, and it matters tremendously. The nurturing of my grandmother and my grandmothers and mother, let's get that, are ingrained in me to this day. I can still see my grandmothers opening Scripture, reading the Bible to me. I can still hear them praying with me. I can still feel them pull me in the red wagon up to get ice cream. I can still see my grandma, nice, all 4'8" of her, sitting at the kitchen table folding these tiny boxes. You have your memories. I have mine. But your devotion, your prayers, they all matter. I can still see my mom tucking me in, right? I'm a grown man, but the memory's still there. Little house on the prairie. I still hear her comforting voice as we're driving to the hospital, again, with another broken bone. It'll be okay. Let today's message encourage you to keep going in your personal call as a mother. Set aside comparison and go after what God's calling you to do, what God's calling you to give, what God's calling you to be. Guys, let's press in. Kids, let's honor these women for the creations that God has made them to be. Ultimately, you're there to raise up the next generation of God's people as you care for them. Let's read Philippians 1:6 again. It says, and I am sure of this, that he, God, that he who began a good work in you, think about this with your kids, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. You're doing everything you can. God sees it. Keep praying, keep going. But Jesus Christ is the finisher of our faith. And ultimately, we release our kids back into his hands.